Tenakota Tifano o Auckland Unitarians, Tenakota na Manahiri, no mai harimai ketene, fare karakia o te atua, ko Jonathan Mason toku ingoa, no reira Tenakoto, 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 katoa. Welcome all, and to those who thought you were coming to our place of worship and fellowship, Cyclone Gabriella had, of course, other ideas. So we're having a 100% Zoom service. Also, welcome to those who were planning to join by Zoom and now are joining by Zoom. My name is Jonathan Mason, longtime member at the congregation. I'll be leading our service today. Apologies in advance for rough patches in today's service. I was planning to come to the sanctuary. And we only made the decision to go virtual a couple hours ago. And a special thanks to John DeLeo, who spent an hour with me on the phone today, pivoting to the virtual service. My opening words are from Suzanne Hayasaki with a poem, Trust the Universe. I must trust the universe. I must take my cue from the stars. I must listen to the infinite wisdom hidden in their shining silence. Everything that must be, will be, in our time, in its own mind. I am meant to sit in witness, to observe, to learn, to accept. The more I try to assert my will, the more I flail in my own failings, the more I question and doubt, the more my spirit seeps out. I may seem remote, I may appear cold, I may hold myself separate from the ripples of panic, flowing out from so many souls. I simply hold myself steady. The road ahead is long and uncertain. I must preserve my energy. I must keep parts of me in reserve. I must tend my tiny garden. I must mend my fence and stock my shelves. I must rely on my own resources until this storm passes and sanity returns. And now for our chalice lighting. I'll lead the covenant of our congregation. Love is the doctrine of this church. Quest for truth is the sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each other and with our God. Great. That's, by the way, one of my, when you do a service, you get to do sort of the hymns for it. And though I may speak, it's not, I'd say, mainstream Unitarian. It's based on Paul's letter to the Corinthians, but gosh, I just love, I've always loved that hymn. So threw that into the service today. At this time, we'll play Spirit of Life. Now for another musical interlude, that old chestnut, old Unitarian chestnut, Will Build a Land. Never gets old, that one for me. So now for my talk, Extraterrestrial Life and Unitarianism. The question of whether there's life in the universe is one of the huge, to me, one of the huge mysteries of life it had been explored probably forever, but certainly in the 20th and 21st century. There's movies that attract our attention. E.T., Contact, Arrival, and Interstellar that explore these issues. There's a whole other set of movies that talk about alien invasions, the first one being War of the Worlds, but continuing now with such movies like Independence Day. But for me personally, I remember growing up, walking with my parents in a cold Detroit, Michigan sky, seeing a meteor, shooting star, and having this sense of wonder in the night sky. And I think about indigenous cultures, Maori, Native Americans, and back to the Greeks, who sought to put order into the night sky by making sets of stars mean something more. Matariki with the change of the seasons, or the mythical figures of the Greeks. So for eons, people have been looking at the skies. And so when we move forward to the 21st century, one of my big questions linked to spiritual Unitarianism is the mystery of life. Is there other life out there? And also, does the life out there have any implication for Unitarian Principle 7, which is that whole web of interdependence? And so I thought in the following talk, I'm not an expert, but I'd give you sort of a sense of what I know has happened in astronomy in the last 20 to 30 years on the universe and the implications of that. And then muse about what it might mean for spirituality, for religion in general, and Unitarianism specifically. And so, but to give you a preview of the key points of my talk is that in the last 20 to 30 years, there's been huge leaps forward in what we know about the universe. So there's quite significant steps forward. These steps forward bring up more questions. So with every answer, there's also a question, but also brings a higher degree of probability that we'll know more definitively about life outside, away from Earth in the next, say, 50 years. By the way, I want to apologize and just emphasize every talk is personal. I know there are people who believe that there's UFOs all the time hitting Earth and stuff, and this talk will reflect my personal views. So let me first get to the science and then go on to the implications for spirituality. So 30 years ago, an astronomer did not know if there were any other solar systems out there. So they thought it was likely, but they couldn't say definitively that other stars, which we could see, had other planets rotating around them. And they were, let's say, skeptical as to whether telescopes and things available from the Earth or even in Earth's orbit could ever identify planets other than really big planets. They thought they had a shot at really big planets. Intelligence being what it is, with the addition of huge computers, astronomers have figured out ways to identify planets. For the biggest planets, the better telescopes, like the current Webb telescope, can actually see them. But there's other innovative things that they've done. For example, use big computers to look at suns, stars out there. When does the light from those stars differ slightly? And then they plot planetary orbits and see whether it repeats as the mathematical models should. So they know there's a planet or planets there by just slight differences in the light they're getting from stars that isn't random, but occurs with a schedule that makes sense. I don't know, it's getting a little complicated, but suffice to say, the astronomers have been extremely innovative, and many astronomers now have access to these data series coming off, like the Webb and the old Hubble. And so they've identified over 5,000 planets in the last 20 years, just scratching the surface. So what it looks like is our solar system isn't unique, but is quite typical. And that also means that the chance of life, extraterrestrial life, is much, much higher, because there's so many stars, and then there's all these planets rotating around the stars. The law of averages indicates extraterrestrial life is likely. There's a second big development that's just occurring now, and I'd put it under the category of techno-signatures. And so with the improvement in telescopes, and not just visually, but using a range of data, including colors, to indicate what elements might be present on a planet, astronomers are increasingly confident that they can find planets with techno-signatures. Techno-signatures would be a strong indication of life. So for our planet, as an example, we have a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere. And that indicates an advanced enough civilization that we're burning fossil fuels, admittedly not for long, but so that would be an example of a techno-signature. So this is quite exciting in terms of scientific advancement, but it also brings up questions as well. I mean, specifically, if we're making this progress, and Earth has had life for a fair amount of geologic time, let's call it, sort of 2 billion years, then where are the UFOs? First is, where are the UFOs? And some people, as I noted earlier, think they're all over. But my personal opinion is, when we go out into space, we leave all sorts of gear behind. And I have not seen the incontrovertible evidence of aliens coming to Earth and leaving gear behind. And I would have thought that would happen. And so I'm skeptical that UFOs are visiting the Earth all the time. Right? And there's a second reason that I'm skeptical, which is, as much advancement as we've had in science, a big hurdle is still actually person spaceflight. So if we take our current technology and take the closest star, Alpha Centauri, it would still take us 100,000 years to reach it, at our current speeds with astronauts and space capsules. And within a couple decades, astronauts would die of radiation, space radiation, once you get outside of the Earth's orbit. You're exposed to heavy radiation. And so I think the challenge of space travel is one that we won't see in our foreseeable future. Can we go to Mars? Yes, but longer, no. And if you look at the cutting edge movies, they create these wormholes where you can go. There's like a back door to go way out into the universe. The reason they do that is that there's no other way to go way out into the universe, but there's no evidence, unlike black holes, there's no evidence of wormholes actually existing. Now, but amazingly enough, unmanned space travel to distant places is on the table. So astronomers and sort of space travel, NASA is working on developing very small unmanned space capsule, like a gram in weight, that they could use a little solar powered backing and move it at the speed of light. If we could move a small space capsule at the speed of light, we could get to Alpha Centauri in 20 years. So, or at let's say close to the speed of light. So that is on the table being actively worked at, really interesting. But then back to the mystery is, if we've had 2 billion years of life, and okay, so let's say actually putting life on a space capsule quite challenging, communication doesn't look as challenging. I mean, we send radio waves out, or we've sent unmanned probes out. Where are the unmanned probes? And it may be that we aren't looking long enough. It's just a blink of an eye that we've really been thinking about it this way. That's sort of 70 years we've been thinking about it this way. And it also may be that life is trying to communicate with us, but they're communicating in a way that we don't recognize. So watch the space, but there are questions that it brings up. And let me give you one more troubling possibility for why intelligent life hasn't communicated with us. And that is that when intelligent life occurs, it finds it very hard to sustain itself. It sort of exhausts the resources it has. It builds weapons that incinerates itself. And so when intelligent life occurs, it only occurs for a short period of time before going back to less intelligent life. That's the most troubling possibility. So, but one exciting thing, if we could communicate with intelligent life, and this is explored in the movie Contact, is it's possible we could really leap ahead with technological advances that we can't conceive of today. I mean, just as the printing press was so important in invention in sort of 1450s, oh my gosh, communicating with a extraterrestrial life that was willing to share sort of the best practices with us could genuinely be a game changer. They could teach us how to do cold nuclear fusion that would solve our energy issues, fossil fuel issues, very, very quickly. So that's the, and I tried to sort of do it in simple terms, but I apologize if I've missed things. I'm not an expert in this field by any, and I've apologized, skipped things, omitted things, or distorted things, but I think I got it approximately right. I mean, sort of roughly right. How about that? So now the second part of my talk is, what does this mean for Unitarianism? So let's look at option one, that we actually start communicating with extraterrestrial life. I think it's fair to say that, my opinion, Darwin was the first step in really undermining the groundings. I'll just focus on Christianity, of fundamentalist Christianity, because he actually said is, rather than being this unique God-given species with stewardship for everything else, we're part of the web of interdependence. We're part of this ecosystem, and we come from the ecosystem. We're not unique. If there's extraterrestrial life, I think that would be the second foundation step to say, oh, and the Earth isn't even unique. We're part of a system where life pops up in multiple places. I think the good part of that would be the sort of a lack of focus on God-given special people who don't need to play by the rules and who have benefits that others don't have. And Unitarians, we just be like, sort of soak it up, and our theology, it would fit within our theology comfortably. If you go back and ever watch, or if you've ever watched the film Contact, once that communication started, there were religious zealots who tried to actually sabotage the whole operation. So I think it is a threat to established religion, but Unitarianism would accommodate that easily. But as we wait to communicate with other intelligent life, this mystery continues. There should be billions of planets with intelligent life out there, but they have been unable to communicate with us. And where I come back to on that is, gosh, it sounds like the Earth's pretty unique for that period of time. And even if it isn't unique, we have no way of traveling distances. This idea that we can exhaust the Earth's resources and move to Mars is a pipe dream, and in my opinion. And so we have to go to our Unitarian Principle 7 about the interdependence of life and treat the Earth as a unique resource that we have to treasure and save and work together, because it is our home and it is our only home. And to more broadly protected biodiversity and enhance the biodiversity that we have on the Earth. So if you're interested in this, there's just do extraterrestrial life on Google or the internet, and you can find a lot of good articles on it. But I also would specifically direct you to my three favorite movies of the last 20 years in this space, which are Contact, Interstellar, and Arrival. And all three of those movies had like astronomers as consultants that helped them, sort of guided them through to sort of keep it science-based. So they Hollywoodize it a little bit, but they're actually very good movies on the space, in this space. So look, in conclusion, I mean, to summarize my points, huge scientific progress, the chance of much more progress in the next sort of 20 to 50 years. But right now we have huge questions, huge mystery. And if I look at my life journey, it's really thinking about those mysteries in life. And Unitarians are often teased about liking questions more than answers. But this case would actually be another example of that, of good Unitarian theology. Analyze the space and you have as many questions as answers. So with that's my quick tour through Unitarianism and extraterrestrial life. So to close the talk, before we go to Extinguishing the Chalice and our sort of challenge system. By the way, a challenge session would be to, when we get into small groups, is just discuss, what do we think about the space? Like, have we thought about individually whether it's extraterrestrial life? And feel free to talk if you think there's UFOs all over the place. So, or even people taken over by aliens. That's another subset of this. But talk about how we think about this issue. But until then, we have a couple more steps, of course. And the first step is to do a video by, I think, either Unitarian or Unitarian sympathetic, Peter Mayer, Everything Holy Now. John, could you tee the video up? That's, again, just like, though I speak with bravest fire, I discovered that a visiting minister showed us that maybe 15 years ago. And I'm just, gosh, I think that's a beautiful, beautiful video. So if we move back to the service, now is the time for extinguishing my virtual chalice. And so we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we're together again. John's going to split us up into breakout groups. And the question again is, what do we think about life out there in the universe? Have we watched any movies that have shaped us? Do we think there's UFOs all around us? And have a little discussion about the big universe.